The Giza Plateau, situated west of Memphis, held a special significance for Amenhotep II. It was here that he first learned the arts of archery and horseback riding. Near the Great Sphinx lay a practice course, making the area a favored site for royal sports and pastimes. One day, as Amenhotep galloped through the grand necropolis, he was struck with awe by the majestic pyramids of Khufu and Khafra, ancestors from a distant past. Moved by their immense size, grandeur, and age, the king resolved to immortalize his own accomplishments on a magnificent stela placed between the paws of the Great Sphinx. This monument combined lofty declarations with specific details of his sporting prowess, offering valuable insight into his character. In further tribute to the Sphinx, Amenhotep constructed a temple beside it, venerating the monument as the sun god Hormukit, Horus of the horizon. The temple quickly became a favored place of worship for other members of the royal family, including Amenhotep's son and successor, Thutmose IV. Thutmose IV took his devotion to the Sphinx even further. He declared Hormukit to be his personal protector, crediting the god for his rise to kingship. His own great stela, erected beside his father's, recounted how Hormukit appeared to him in a dream while he was still a prince, promising him the throne if he would clear away the sand engulfing the Sphinx. After ascending the throne of Horus, Thutmose fulfilled this divine request, completing the excavation and constructing an enclosure wall to safeguard the monument from future desert encroachment. Notably, his inscription makes no reference to Amenhotep, the state god so prominently honored in his father's stela, focusing instead on Hormukit. Under Thutmose's reign, this northern, solar deity became the chief source of royal legitimacy. Even at Ipit Sut, the sanctuary of Amenhotep, Thutmose had himself portrayed as a hybrid of man and celestial falcon, emphasizing his identification with the sun god. Through this deliberate imagery, he highlighted the divine solar aspects of kingship, moving away from the military image that had defined his predecessors. With peace established with Mittani, Thutmose IV shifted his focus to domestic matters rather than military campaigns. Diplomacy replaced warfare as the primary tool of foreign policy. In Nubia, administration was reorganized with the appointment of a viceroy to oversee all Egyptian-controlled territories. In the north, Thutmose strengthened ties with Mittani by marrying a Mittanian princess, sealing an alliance with a former adversary. Just 2 generations earlier, his ancestor Thutmose III had battled Mittani for dominance in the Near East. Now, former enemies were bound by marriage. This peaceful environment allowed trade to flourish once more across the eastern Mediterranean, Palestine, Syria, and Mesopotamia, with caravans transporting luxury goods by both land and sea. Egypt, rich in gold, profited most from this trade boom, exchanging its precious metal for foreign metals, timber, gemstones, and other royal luxuries. The alliance with Mittani also fueled a surge of new construction projects throughout Egypt and Nubia. These monuments prominently featured solar motifs, signaling a shift in royal ideology. With secure borders, peaceful neighbors, and a monarchy more resplendent than ever, Egypt stood poised for an expansion of kingship unrivaled since the era of the Great Pyramid. All Egyptian kings possessed a flair for self-promotion. For Amenhotep III, the 9th ruler of the 18th dynasty, 1390 to 1353, it must have been particularly challenging to suppress the grandiose impulses that came with kingship. Descended from conquerors and seated on a throne blessed by the sun, Amenhotep inherited from his father, Thutmose IV, a nation enjoying extraordinary wealth and rare stability. Egypt's dominance over the Near East had reached its peak. Peaceful relations had been established and solidified with other great powers, including Babylonia, Assyria, and Mittani. Throughout his nearly 40-year reign, Amenhotep III enjoyed the unique distinction of being the only pharaoh of his dynasty who never waged war in Western Asia. His rule was instead marked by a flourishing of the arts and an extraordinary cultivation of his own divine persona. Amenhotep's cultivation of royal fame began early. Still a child when he ascended the throne, He experienced his first taste of royal spectacle just 2 years into his reign, in 1389. Likely a carefully staged event rather than a spontaneous act of courage, the young king participated in a wild bull hunt at Shetep, west of Memphis. To commemorate the event, the royal court issued a large glazed scarab. Distributed widely across Egypt and its vassal territories, it broadcasted the young monarch's feat both to his subjects and for future generations. A remarkable event occurred for His Majesty. A report reached him. There are wild bulls in the desert near Shetep. His Majesty sailed swiftly downstream and arrived peacefully at Shetep in the morning. Mounted on his chariot, with his full army following behind, His Majesty ordered a trench to be dug to trap the wild bulls. He then advanced against them. The herd numbered 170. On the first day, His Majesty hunted and captured 56 wild bulls. After resting his horses for 4 days, he resumed the hunt and captured 40 more. In total, 96 wild bulls were taken. The repetitive and ceremonial tone of the account seems almost offensive. Even for a youthful king nearing adolescence, it likely required little effort to slaughter bulls trapped in an enclosed space with no chance of escape. Yet this announcement established the tone for Amenhotep's reign. He was fulfilling one of the king's most ancient and sacred duties, maintaining order by subduing manifestations of chaos. Another commemorative scarab, issued during the 10th year of his reign, celebrated a similar feat, recording that the king had personally hunted and killed 110 lions during his first decade on the throne. After his youthful enthusiasm for blood sports to demonstrate his manhood, a transformation appears to have taken place in Amenhotep III as he matured. The following commemorative scarab, issued just a year later, celebrated not a hunting expedition, but a construction achievement. This was no simple ornamental pond. It was a rowing lake over a mile long and nearly a quarter-mile wide. To inaugurate the lake, the king sailed across it in his royal barge, aptly named the Dazzling Orb. In both the nature of the project and its grand opening, Amenhotep seemed to have discovered his true passion. From this point forward, the kingdom echoed with the sounds of laborers digging, hammering, chiseling, and building. Amenhotep III would become Egypt's most prolific royal builder since the very foundation of the kingdom 15 centuries earlier, fulfilling his vision of creating monuments, the likes of which had never existed since the earliest times of the two lands. Many of these structures would also serve as stages for magnificent festivals and elaborate ceremonies, all centered on exalting the king himself. Evidence from 2 of Egypt's largest limestone quarries reveals that construction had already begun at the very start of Amenhotep III's reign. Reopening these quarries was his first recorded royal act. The pace of building accelerated dramatically during his second and third decades on the throne, eventually reaching an unprecedented scale. From the Nile Delta to Nubia, scarcely a temple existed that did not bear his influence. At Saqqara, he ordered the first tomb, chapel, and burial for the sacred Apis bull, revered as the incarnation of the Memphite creator god Ptah. On the island of Abu, he supervised the building of a new shrine dedicated to another creator god, Khnum. The greatest beneficiary of this royal patronage, however, was the supreme creator, the sun god Ra. In a carefully orchestrated religious program, Amenhotep and his theologians reinterpreted various national cults to emphasize their ties to solar worship. At Kmun, for example, colossal statues of baboons were erected at Thoth's temple. While sacred to Thoth, baboons were also associated with Ra because they heralded the sunrise with their cries. At Sumenu, modern El Rizakat, near Thebes, the local crocodile god Sobuk was transformed into Sobuk Ra, a hybrid deity, and honored with a grand new temple adorned with monumental art. In all his construction projects, Amenhotep carefully linked himself with solar divinities, adopting titles such as heir of Ra and Ra's chosen one. He sought to present himself as the living embodiment of solar power, creator and sustainer of life, bringer of fertility, and the fierce eye of Ra that, when provoked, unleashed its wrath upon Egypt's enemies to preserve cosmic order. Never before had divine kingship been so deeply intertwined with such sophisticated theological constructs. Among all the sites that witnessed Amenhotep's ambitious building campaigns, none experienced his full vision and energy quite like Thebes. From the moment he ascended the throne, the king adopted the title ruler of Thebes and swiftly moved to justify it through action as well as proclamation. Under his rule, the city dedicated to Ushered was transformed into Homer's famed 100-gated Thebes. Towering temple gateways dotted both sides of the Nile, creating a landscape dominated by monumental grandeur. At Ipit-Sut, the heart of Ammonius worship, Amenhotep commissioned a new grand entrance to the entire temple complex, while also adding another gateway on the southern axis leading to the sanctuary of the goddess Mut. The king lavishly adorned these structures with an extraordinary array of stone sculptures, including over 700 statues of Sekhmet, the lioness goddess tied to the blazing Eye of Ara, with 2 statues representing each day of the year. In the northern part of the Ipit-Sut precinct, he oversaw the reconstruction of an older temple dedicated to Montu, the son of Ammonius and Mut, and the creation of a new temple honoring Mut, the goddess of truth and justice. Every building was enriched with an astonishing quantity of fine sculpture. In fact, more statues of Amenhotep III survive than of any other pharaoh, a testament to the ceaseless productivity of his royal workshops. Yet, the king's projects at Ipit-Sut paled in comparison to his grandest undertaking in Thebes, his mortuary temple on the Nile's western bank. Initiated early in his reign and continually expanded in later stages, this temple would become the largest royal sanctuary ever built in ancient Egypt. Though only the column bases remain today, due to later rulers repurposing its stones, the original temple was an unparalleled marvel. Spanning 93 acres, it surpassed even the great temple of Ammonius Ra in scale and magnificence, overflowing with colossal statues. Within one of its courtyards stood immense statues of Amenhotep III as Osiris, towering over 26 feet tall. Another court featured a seated double statue of the king and his queen, tied with fragments of 2 even larger colossi discovered nearby. The temple's northern entrance was flanked by gigantic granite statues of the king striding forward, while vast processional avenues lined with enormous sphinxes and jackals connected its 3 grand courtyards. Each court featured monumental gateways, guarded by further colossal seated figures of Amenhotep. The most imposing pair, still standing today and known as the Colossi of Memnon, rise over 60 feet high, accompanied by smaller statues of his mother, wife, and daughter. Visible for miles, these towering monuments projected Amenhotep's supreme authority, inspiring awe and reverence in all who beheld them. Beyond their imposing presence, these massive statues carried a deeper, symbolic meaning. Each year, after being partially submerged by the Nile's floods for several months, they would reappear as symbols of rebirth, perfectly expressing the rejuvenating purpose of Amenhotep's mortuary temple, his eternal mansion of millions of years. Many of the temple's divine statues were carved from granodiorite, their black color signifying rebirth, while statues of the king were often made from red granite or golden quartzite, their solar hues reinforcing his close association with Tish, the sun god. Everywhere throughout this vast complex, the themes of creation and rebirth echoed, presenting the king as the vital center of the universe. Up to this point, Amenhotep's reign had dramatically elevated the prestige of kingship and his own divine status. Yet even greater achievements still lay ahead. While Amenhotep, the ruler of rulers, was transforming Thebes and elevating both the monarchy and his personal glory, his envoys worked tirelessly to spread his fame and secure his influence across distant lands. Traveling throughout the Near East and the Eastern Mediterranean, these emissaries negotiated treaties and secured advantageous trade deals, ensuring Egypt remained a dominant force and advancing their king's imperial ambitions. One of the most fascinating aspects of Amenhotep's foreign policy is revealed through a set of place names inscribed on statue bases found at his mortuary temple. The hieroglyphic system, ill-suited to foreign languages, rendered these names an awkward and initially puzzling combinations. I am New York Shah, Katunawai, Khan Ush, Mukinu. Upon closer examination, these inscriptions turn out to list key centers of the 14th century BC Greek world. Amnisos, Kydonia, Knossos, and Mycenae, along with Phaistos, Lyctos, Nauplian, Boeotian Thebes, the island of Kythera, and possibly even Ilios, Homer's Troy. The sequence of names suggests the route taken by an Egyptian diplomatic mission dispatched to engage the leading city-states of the Minoan and Mycenaean worlds. Such an initiative made perfect sense. Mycenaean trade networks supplied Egypt with valuable cobalt used to produce deep blue glass, while lead for opaque and white glass was imported from Greece's Laurion Peninsula, part of Mycenae's territory. Despite Egypt's traditional mistrust of foreigners, it could not afford to ignore this rising economic power in the Aegean. Closer to Egypt's own borders, diplomacy remained crucial for maintaining control over its Near Eastern conquests. A groundbreaking discovery made in 1887 shed light on the intricate relationships between Egypt, its vassals, and rival powers. The Amarna Letters consist of 380 clay tablets written in cuneiform, using the Babylonian language, the diplomatic tongue of the Bronze Age. Many of these letters date from Amenhotep III's later years, sent by subordinate rulers who dutifully addressed the pharaoh as "my son, my lord." Unlike Nubia, where Egypt imposed its own administrative system through appointed officials, its territories in the Near East retained local rulers who pledged loyalty to the pharaoh and paid regular tribute. Still, the humiliation of foreign domination bred resentment, and many vassals spent their time conspiring against one another, often trying to manipulate Egypt's position against rival powers like the Mittani and the Hittites. The Amarna Letters reveal a highly unstable political landscape, characterized by bitter rivalries and frequent skirmishes between city-states. In Palestine, troublesome vassals such as Milkalu of Gezer, Biridia of Megiddo, and Abdi-Heba of Jerusalem stirred constant unrest. Generally, Egypt avoided entangling itself in these minor disputes unless its economic interests were jeopardized. More serious challenges arose further north, where instability threatened the delicate balance of power between Egypt and the Hittites. A significant portion of the Amarna archive consists of pleas from Ribada of Kebni, a city long allied with Egypt. Ribada grew increasingly wary of his neighbor, the state of Amurru, ruled by the ambitious Abdi-Ashurda. His suspicions proved justified. As Amurru advanced, it seized Sumer, modern Al-Hamidiyya, Egypt's garrison town and administrative hub, and virtually besieged Kebni. This upheaval provided the Hittites with a perfect pretext to intervene, ultimately resulting in Amurru's defection from Egyptian control. The episode served as a stark reminder of how local disputes could quickly escalate, undermining Egypt's authority and jeopardizing its imperial stability. Whereas Thutmose III and Amenhotep II would not have hesitated to launch military campaigns, Amenhotep III adopted a distinctly different approach. His primary aim was to exploit his foreign territories economically and maintain political control with minimal deployment of Egyptian troops. To achieve this, Egyptian garrisons were stationed at key coastal ports such as Gaza, Jaffa, Al-Azza, and Sumer, as well as at strategic inland locations like Beth Shan at the eastern end of the Jezreel Valley and Qumidi in the Bekaa Valley. Fortified grain storage facilities along the coastline stood ready to serve as supply centers if military action became necessary. Administrative headquarters led by Egyptian governors in Gaza, Qumidi, and Sumer completed the system of colonial governance. This structure proved largely effective, and the loyalty of subordinate rulers was further secured through the regular distribution of valuable ornaments produced by the royal workshops, somewhat comparable to how the British Empire awarded honors to Indian princes. When it came to dealing with other major powers, however, mere gifts were insufficient. Though the pharaoh was regarded by his people as ruler of the universe, in reality, he shared the international stage with 6 other Near Eastern sovereigns. In Mesopotamia, these included the kings of Babylonia, Assyria, and Mittani. In Anatolia, the rulers of the Hittites and Arzawa, and in the Eastern Mediterranean, the king of Alatia, Cyprus. This exclusive circle referred to one another as brother, and their correspondence often revealed petty rivalries when demands went unmet. Among the Amarna Letters, roughly 3 dozen communications from these great powers to Amenhotep III center around customary diplomatic exchanges. A typical letter from King Tushratta of Mittani exemplifies the tone. For me, everything goes well. May all be well for you, for your household, your wives, your sons, your nobles, your warriors, your horses, your chariots, and throughout your country. Yet there was another recurring theme: Egypt's legendary wealth. Tushratta expressed it directly. May my brother send me unworked gold in vast quantities, far more than was sent to my father. In your land, gold is as abundant as dust. Gold served as the main currency of diplomatic exchange, and Egypt's rich Nubian mines granted it significant leverage. It is no surprise, then, that a rebellion in Nubia's gold mining region during the 30th year of Amenhotep III's reign was swiftly and harshly crushed. Without its gold, Egypt's international power would have been severely weakened. In exchange for these regular gold shipments, Amenhotep III sought to obtain something even more valuable: royal daughters as diplomatic brides. Early in his reign, he succeeded in marrying a Mittanian princess, and a commemorative scarab from 1381 records the arrival of Princess Gulukapa, accompanied by 317 female attendants, described simply as marvels. 25 years later, Amenhotep pursued a second Mittanian marriage, both to reaffirm ties with the new king of Mittani and, perhaps, because Gulukapa had aged. The negotiations for this new alliance involved intricate exchanges of gifts. Eventually, King Tushratta agreed to send his daughter Tadukapa, along with a retinue of 270 women and 30 men, plus a massive dowry of 44 pounds of gold and an additional 13 pounds as a personal gift to Amenhotep himself. Though one might view this as excessive, the pharaoh was clearly pleased, and the alliance was secured. The Babylonians, however, proved less accommodating. Amenhotep had already married one Babylonian princess earlier in his reign, but when he sought another union with a new Babylonian king, Kadashman-Enlil I, he encountered resistance. Kadashman-Enlil complained that no one had seen his sister since she entered Amenhotep's harem more than a decade earlier, making him hesitant to send another daughter into what seemed an uncertain fate. He also expressed offense at not being invited to Amenhotep's recent major festival. Further, he raised concerns about how foreign brides were treated at the Egyptian court. My daughters who have married neighboring kings still communicate with my messengers and send me gifts, but the one with you is neglected. To compound matters, Kadashman-Enlil proposed a reciprocal marriage arrangement. Amenhotep flatly refused, asserting that no Egyptian princess had ever been given in marriage to a foreigner and that he had no intention of breaking this precedent merely to please the Babylonian king. As a result, the prospects for another Babylonian marriage initially seemed bleak. In the end, though, Egypt's wealth once again tipped the scales, and Amenhotep secured the alliance he desired. The Amarna Letters record one additional marriage negotiation, this time between Amenhotep and King Tarkanradu of Arzawa. Though the correspondence does not reveal the outcome, it is likely that the negotiations were successful. Amenhotep III was not known for accepting failure. As pharaoh approached his first jubilee, marking 30 years of rule, his campaign of self-glorification entered a new stage. Since ancient times, the climax of a king's jubilee celebrations had been the said festival. For Amenhotep III, the idea of renewal held particular importance, and he resolved to approach it with a thoroughness surpassing all his predecessors. He envisioned not a single ceremonial event, but, in keeping with his grand ambitions, a monumental structure and a lasting display of royal statuary to secure his eternal rebirth. The site chosen for this immense project lay on the east bank of the Nile, roughly 3 miles south of Amenhotep, directly opposite his mortuary temple. Today, it forms the heart of modern Luxor. At the start of his reign, the area was virtually undeveloped, containing only a modest shrine from the time of Hatshepsut and Thutmose III, originally built as a southern residence for Ammonius RA of Amenhotep. Under the king's orders, construction crews swiftly expanded and transformed this modest structure, adding a vast open courtyard bordered by double rows of columns shaped like papyrus bundles. This solar court reflected Amenhotep's growing devotion to sun worship, for which open, roofless spaces were far more appropriate than conventional enclosed temples. Similar sun courts were added to many temples across Egypt under his directive. The completed solar court at Luxor stands as one of the most breathtaking and impressive of all ancient Egyptian temple complexes. Its walls are covered in electrum, its furnishings are of silver, all its gateways gleam at their thresholds. Its pylon reaches the heavens, its flagpoles stand among the stars. When the people behold it, they will praise his majesty. In front of the solar court, an even grander structure arose, an immense colonnade hall with columns soaring over 60 feet high, adorned with 6 colossal statues of the king in striding poses. These architectural marvels were designed to awe, and they succeeded brilliantly. Yet the temple's true theological significance lay hidden in its rear chambers. Arguably the most important room in the entire complex is a small chamber located behind a bark shrine near the offering room. On its western wall, a finely carved relief portrays 2 goddesses gently supporting the figures of a man and a woman, or rather, Mittani and someone appearing as Thutmose IV. The text describes, in surprisingly vivid language, the god's covert visit to the queen's bedchamber and her eager reaction to his advances. She awoke to the god's fragrance and cried out with delight before his majesty. She rejoiced at his beauty, and love for him filled her entire being. Overcome with ecstasy, Mittani exclaims, "How mighty is your power! Your sweet fragrance strengthens all my limbs." The sexual symbolism is unmistakable. Following the conception, the divine announcement is declared. Amenhotep ruler of Thebes is the name of the child I have placed within your womb. He shall wield mighty kingship over this land. He shall rule the 2 lands like Ra forever. The purpose of this elaborate narrative was to reinforce the myth of the king's divine origin, a tradition that Egyptian monarchs had embraced for centuries to varying degrees. Earlier in the 18th dynasty, Hatshepsut had also proclaimed her divine birth at her temple in Deir el-Bahari, though she avoided delving into explicit details. Amenhotep III, by contrast, reveled in the intimate portrayal of Ammonius RA's union with the queen. Perhaps this openness was fitting for a ruler who filled his harem with numerous foreign marvels, and who even counted among his local concubines a woman nicknamed, "She whose nights on the town are many." After establishing the divine origins of the king, Luxor Temple offered yet another profound statement on the ideology of kingship. In fact, the temple's most astonishing secret lies in its true purpose. Unlike most temples in Egypt, it was not primarily dedicated to the worship of a deity. Its role as Ammonius RA's southern residence served merely as a convenient facade, masking a deeper reality. The real significance of Luxor Temple in the mythology of Egyptian kingship is revealed in the reliefs adorning Amenhotep's grand colonnade. These depict the most significant ritual held at Luxor, the annual festival of Opet. Every year, the sacred images of Ammonius RA, Mut, and Khonsu were transported from Amenhotep to Luxor in a grand procession, either by land or by river. As the sacred bark shrines made their way through the streets, carried by priests, crowds gathered to catch sight of these holy figures and to receive their blessings. The Opet festival was a time of great celebration, feasting, and temporary relief from daily life. Yet, like most things in ancient Egypt, its ultimate purpose was not for the populace, but for the king. Once within Luxor Temple's sacred precinct, the images were removed from their barks and placed in their designated chambers. At this point, the king entered the sanctuary alone to commune privately with the image of Ammonius RA. After this sacred encounter, he emerged into the Hall of Appearance, where priests and courtiers awaited to pay him homage. Special hieroglyphic markers at the base of columns indicated where the general public could stand to witness the proceedings. His transformation was evident to all, and one can assume that no one dared comment if there was anything amiss in his appearance. Through his intimate communion with the supreme God, the king had been spiritually renewed and his divinity reaffirmed. He had once again become the living son of Ammonius RA. At the heart of this ceremony was the royal ka. It was one of ancient Egypt's most ingenious theological concepts, resolving the paradox of a ruler who was both mortal and divine. The Opet festival provided the king with the opportunity to reunite with the royal ka, becoming foremost of all the living castes, a god embodied on earth. Luxor Temple, therefore, was in essence a temple dedicated to the royal ka. As always, Amenhotep ordered the creation of a magnificent sculpture to commemorate the extraordinary transformation brought about by the Opet festival. The statue of the rejuvenated Amenhotep III stands as one of the greatest masterpieces of ancient Egyptian art. Life-sized, it portrays the king striding forward with strength and confidence, his muscular torso and limbs embodying youthful vigor and masculinity. The most striking feature, however, is his face. With oversized almond-shaped eyes, full lips, a small, flat nose, and pronounced cheekbones, his features appear intentionally childlike, conveying an exaggerated sense of youth. The statue presents the king as literally rejuvenated, transformed back into a child through the magical power of the Opet ceremonies. The statue's symbolism extends far beyond its physical form. Its very material underscores the king's intimate connection to the sun god. Carved from a deep purplish-red quartzite, known to the ancient Egyptians as bayet, it would have originally been adorned with gilded accents on the collar, bracelets, sandals, and crown, allowing it to gleam like the sun in the open quartz daylight. A closer look at the back of the statue reveals a feather pattern on the king's buttocks, signifying his partial transformation into a celestial falcon. Further emphasizing his solar associations, the king's kilt is decorated with rearing cobras, each topped with a solar disk. Amenhotep wears the double crown and stands atop a sledge, both symbols linked to the creator god Adam. This rich blend of visual symbolism declares that Amenhotep III has been reborn, united with Ra and Adam, an eternal god king. The inscription carved into the back pillar reinforces this message, proclaiming him foremost of all the living castes and the dazzling orb of all lands. At this point, the deliberate and systematic amplification of royal power had reached its peak. No longer simply the son of Ra, the king had become one with the sun itself, the very creator god who brings light and life to the world. His transformation was complete.